Okay, I'm going to see if I can do this from front to back and talk through all the mods and changes that I've made um, to my little Postie in preparation for my big ride. It's a little bit dirty, but that's just because I've only just got back from a ride which involved quite a bit of dirt track a couple of days back, and I haven't washed it yet. So from front to back, I made this mounting bracket for this top box that fits over the headlamp. It mounts on this side to the steering head, and so that's pretty secure. And to that I fitted this top box, which gives me some storage capacity for all my electronics, my GoPros, my power supplies, mics, all that kind of stuff, the electronics that I'm going to be taking on the trip. And it's dust proof, waterproof and everything. The eyes on the top are there to, if I want to secure a tent on there. I've got a small nature hike tent, nice and lightweight nature hike tent that can fit across there and get tied down, or I can use it just for my jacket if I want to take my jacket off and just bungee it on there while I'm riding if it's a bit hot or something like that. So just a multi-purpose tie down spot on the front. Then I fitted these tiny little spot lamps on either side of the lights, and they are just the business. I'll put a link to them. I got them on eBay. They're cheap as chips, and you are able to set them in one of two modes, either with a yellow light or a white light. And I've got them with a yellow light because it's very bright and distinctive, and I want to be visible on this little bike as much as I possibly can. I've obviously put on some knobby tires just to cover me when I'm riding in the dirt. So that's the front end. I've got a couple of mounts on the handlebars for my sat nav and GoPros, etc., etc. So then, to give myself a bit more range when I'm riding, obviously there's the stock tank on these bikes is 5 liters tucked away there under the seat, and that's just not enough with Australian distances. So I looked for a plastic tank to install on this bike, and I just struggled to find one that people were confident about and all that. And there's a place out at Kings Langley, I think it is, in the western suburbs of Sydney, and I forget the name right now, but I went there and they found this tank for me, which I thought was just amazing, and I didn't think it would fit, but it does. It almost fits perfectly. The only problem with it is that it's almost at too much, well, it's at too much of an angle, so some of the fuel in the back of the tank at the bottom there is not really usable. But you know, I get a good 4.5 liters of fuel, usable fuel, out of that tank, so it almost doubles my range. So because I put that tank there and it's covering the down tube where the ignition normally is, I needed to move the ignition, and I just drilled a hole out on the bracket for the speedometer, and I installed the ignition up there. I moved it up there, and it's just a fantastic spot for it. I don't know why these Posties don't come out with the ignition mounted there in the first instance. It's such a pain having to, well, not a pain, but it's just, you know, silly having to lean down on the side of the bike to turn the ignition on or off, when you can just have it up there where it's nice and handy. The other thing I did with this tank is I plumbed it directly into the carby, and I disconnected the main tank input from the main tank. There you can see it with that nut on it right there. I disconnected that and connected the bling tank into the main sort of feed, and I left the reserve line of the original tank connected in position. So all I need to do to utilize fuel, I utilize fuel from this tank first, and when I run out of that, I flick over to reserve, which is the main tank's reserve, but it uses all the fuel in that tank. So that's quite handy and an effective way of doing it. And let's see what else I've done on this section of the bike. Not much else. Alright, the next thing I did was because I beefed the suspension up on this thing and raised it a bit, I've got to be aware that when the bike's on the center stand, there's not enough clearance under the center stand, under the wheels, to drop a wheel out in the case that I have to change a tire. So I welded those loops, just a bit of steel tubing that I cut down, and I welded on either side of the center stand, and that gives me about, I don't know what that is, 15-20 mils of additional lift on the center stand, and it's great. It gives good clearance to for me, if I put the bike on the center stand, for the bike to then for me to change tires or whatever, wheels, tubes, repair punctures, etc. Now the other thing I did, moving further back, is I changed the rear suspension. I've had 2 stabs at this. I bought a pair of cheaper nasties on eBay called RFX shocks, and they got little gas cylinders. They look like they're the business, but they're absolute rubbish. There's only compression adjustment available on them, and because of that, the bike rides like a bucking bronco. It really did with those. I was terrified. I went on a 1,000-kilometer test ride, fully loaded with all my panniers loaded up, and every time I went into sort of a swooping bend, downhill, swooping left or right hand bend, this bike got on the bounce, and you know, you had to back right off because it was just unsafe. So I went on the internet immediately on my return from that ride and tried to research adjustable shocks, and I came across this pair from a place called Mad Hornets, and I'll put the link in the video description. But they are just fantastic. They're fully adjustable, compression adjustment, or preloaded adjustment rather, compression damping adjustment, and rebound damping adjustment. So there's the rebound, there's the compression on top of the cylinder there. So that's the compression damping, rebound damping at the bottom, and then there's an adjusting ring for preload adjustment. And I adjusted these to just 8 mils of preload. I set compression and rebound damping at the midpoints, and they are just perfect. You can see I've just come back from another ride, and the bike was fully loaded, and it's just a pleasure to ride now, absolute pleasure. Took it across a lot of dirt. Maybe I will up the preload another few mils, because I did hear it catch the inner mud guard a couple of times on some big bumps, but I don't want it too rigid because that just makes it uncomfortable. So at this point, I'm not going to jump on that one. I'll do another ride and see how it fares. If I want, in order for me to do that, I have to take the exhaust off completely to get to the preload adjusting ring on the right hand side here. You can see there the adjustment I made for the exhaust mounting, the exhaust bracket. I had to move the exhaust out and drop it a bit so that I could fit these shocks in, which have a larger diameter coil spring than the standard shocks, the stock shocks. And so when you move it out, you also have to drop it so that you don't put too much stress on the header. Yeah, so that's what I did there. So those are the shocks. Coming back to the rack, which looks a bit of a dog's breakfast, but I promise you it's very functional. This frame here that you see going down, around and up behind the strap there is just to keep my soft panniers, which are these here. When I've got them on the bike, it just keeps them from leaning up against the exhaust and perhaps potentially melting through. So that's what that frame is all about. I then manufactured a frame, a hanger for this 5-litre jerry can, because I still needed more fuel. 10 litres is just not enough in Australia. So this holds a further 5 litres, so that's 15 litres all up, and it'll give me a range of over 400 kilometers, probably 450 if I ride carefully, and that should be enough to do it. The distances in the deep outback. So that I manufactured, as I say, that hanger to go and fit the jerry can to. Then the other thing I do travel with is my drone, and I will be traveling with that. And I wanted it accessible to me while I'm on the road without having to unpack panniers and bags on the back and all that kind of stuff. So I got a rack on Gumtree from a dude who had this mounted on, I don't know, some Honda Fireblade. I don't know what it came off, some bike. And I just removed one of the brackets, cut the square tubing at the back so it didn't block my tail light, and put a couple of bolts and a few cable ties, and it's on there really securely. And my case for my drone, which is very similar to this one except black, can then stand vertically in this space here. I've got a big waterproof bag that will go over the panniers in this position here. And so yeah, this bracket is really nice and firm and sturdy and worked a treat on this last ride. And so those are all the mods I've done to the bike. I haven't done anything to the motor. The motor is absolutely perfect. The only thing I did before I went on this ride was adjust the clutch, which is the easiest thing in the world on these little bikes. I'll redo the brakes before I head off on my big trip, but they're still good. They've got plenty on them still. And that's my Postie, all set up, all just one probably final last blast test ride to find any other potential failure points before I go on my trip, which is scheduled for to leave on the 25th of April. All things being equal, you know, with COVID and border openings and all the rubbish that governments involve themselves in trying to prove that their willy's bigger than the other premier's willy, or if they don't have whatever they want to prove is bigger. So yeah, we'll see how that all tracks. So that's the Postie.